Good morning. This might be a little early for some of the media folk. Apologize for that, but I have a plan. I got to get out of here. I'm on a rules committee meeting that takes place in Indianapolis the next 3 days, so I got to get out of here this morning. But that was important for me. I know we did a release the other day, but obviously there have been a lot of questions, a lot of inquiries and stuff like that. So I wanted to introduce Robb and just say a few words, and I'll open it up and let him go, and then we'll both be available to answer some questions. But what's kind of neat for me is I've evolved as a head coach. I got a job as a head coach at such a young age that when I hired my first staff, I was the second youngest, I believe, in my staff room. I hired a bunch of guys that were older than me. When you're in that situation, you're hiring people that you may have heard about, you may have worked with, but you don't really know them, and it ended up being a really good thing for me and my first staff because it was a bunch of guys that had to come in and adjust to the way that we were doing things and adapt their principles and build a program there, what I did at Wisconsin. And then when I made the transition here, it was a little bit of now I knew a bunch of guys in the profession. I knew guys that I could lean on, guys that I've heard about or worked with, and brought about a different pool of guys that I could possibly hire. And as I've evolved now further as a head coach, it's been now guys, for instance, this year, 3 or 4 guys that I've worked with in the past. Bobby Diaco was a GA of mine when I was an assistant. I was now the head coach at the University of Connecticut. You see guys getting jobs, head jobs, defensive coordinator jobs. Mark Stoops and I played together. Now he's a head coach at Kentucky. It's just as I've gotten older, now you know more people in the profession that are equal to you or could possibly be hires. To make a long story short, I guess is what I've been. I first met Robb almost 15 years ago. He was a quality control, came in with Kirk Ferentz and his staff when I was at Iowa. Began to work with him in the room. We learned a new defense together. Grew up under a system that we both strongly believe in. And after a few years, he left there. Really, after I left Kansas State, I believe, and started his career at Maine. And every time we talked, we would get together periodically. I'd go visit him, or he'd see me, or we'd meet together at the convention. And his career just continued to grow and grow and grow. As I became a head coach, it was one of the first times I actually talked about bringing him in and hiring him. But it really was a situation where it didn't work well. When I lost my defensive coordinator to Northern Illinois, Dave Doran, is the next time that I really talked to Robb about possibly being my coordinator. But I opted to promote from within to hire Chris Ash, and obviously had him for a number of years at Wisconsin when I didn't think I was going to be able to have Chris join me here at some point last year when I first came here. Robb and I had several discussions because he was in a transition process as well, deciding between staying at Rutgers or going into the NFL. So when Chris first made me aware of his opportunity at Ohio State and his decision process, I reached out to Robb immediately, as well as a few select other guys, and told him I wasn't in a hurry. I had no need to be in a hurry. We're in the middle of recruiting, and unless it became an issue in that department, it was something I was going to take my time with. So we had constant communication all the way up till signing date, and then basically made the contract final on Saturday, and he flew in here and has got his family in now, and it's an exciting time for me. We spent several hours yesterday, as we did during the course of the interview process, just talking football and in a language that I think will be great for us here, in a way of doing things that I'm excited for, not only our kids, but our program, our staff, and everything else. So one other thing that just to add in there, the process and the way it came about. One guy that I reached out to immediately after Chris had made his decision, I believe it was on a Tuesday. I came back that evening from the National Coaches Convention and sat down with Randy on Wednesday. Gave him my plan of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to move forward, of giving him a senior associate head coaching title and get him an opportunity to continue to assist, not me, just the whole program in a role that he was currently already doing, just amplify it a little bit more and make life a little bit better for him. But I was going to go in a different direction from a defensive coordinator, and him and Randy had a chance to sit down. It was one of those days that sums up recruiting in January for a college football coach. I met Robb at a hotel in Miami because I was down in Florida recruiting with Randy. We did it so that him and Randy could sit down. I sit down at a table. Bobby Petrino walks right in front of me. The first 2 minutes that we're sitting there, I turn around and there's 2 coaches from Syracuse that are standing over there because it's a hotbed for recruiting. And I was naive for trying to think that we could be quiet about it, but everything just kind of flew under the radar. Him and Randy had a chance to sit down for a couple hours and felt really good about everything moving forward. So excited now. I'll turn it over to Robb, and then I'll be available for any questions as well.
You know, I want to thank Brett. I want to thank Jeff Long and the University of Arkansas for this opportunity. I mean, my family and I are thrilled to be part of the Razorback community. The biggest thing for me, I had a chance to come here as an opponent a couple years back, and it left a lasting impression. I mean, there was a great environment, the fans were great, and this was a special place. And Brett's told me a lot of fabulous things about the university, and just the chance to be back here at a special place like this is a phenomenal opportunity. I'm really excited to work with our defensive staff and help our student athletes be the best they can be on and off the field and ultimately play a championship defense.
All right, we'll start with questions.
Coach, you got any ties to this area in terms of recruiting?
You know, I don't. I've done some things on that. I haven't really specifically been in Arkansas in terms of recruiting, but as a coordinator at Rutgers, I had a chance to get into the South quite a bit. I didn't have a recruiting area per se, but wherever there was a defensive football player, I think that's important to develop relationships with guys that you're going to coach. So if there was a guy that was on our board on defense, I was in their home or in their school and developing that relationship with them.
Was your discussion with Randy Shannon already been mentioned, just kind of what was discussed and just how do you feel about your working relationship with him?
I'm excited about that. I think, you know, really at the end of the day, Randy and I kind of share some of the same visions of defense. I know he worked with Coach Wanstead, a person who's been very helpful to me in this process, and that defense at Chicago has kind of transformed into what I've been accustomed to at Rutgers and at Tampa Bay, and Randy has a background in that too, so we were kind of able to speak the same language, and you know, we have a lot of the same goals and a lot of the same visions, and I'm excited to work with him and you know, play championship defense.
Coach, this hasn't exactly been a hotbed for defense the last couple of seasons. What can you do quickly to change things around?
You know, the biggest thing I think is just get everybody on the same page. You know, speak the same language. You know, number one, bring a philosophy, an aggressive philosophy to our defense. I know, you know, Brett and I've had a lot of discussions. You know, offenses, you know, there's a multitude of offenses out there right now, and they make you work a lot, and they dictate the game. And, you know, we want to do that defensively, and the best way to do that is, you know, number one, we want to swarm to the football. Number two, we want to be physical, you know, at all levels of our defense, whether you're a corner, a safety, a linebacker. And those things don't take much talent. That's just an attitude, and that's the first thing we're going to bring. And, you know, schematically, we'll get into other things because you got to do certain things to stop certain offense. But at the end of the day, we'll be simple and, you know, get the ball rolling in the right direction.
You mentioned Coach Wanstead. Who else have been some of the big influences on you as far as your career?
You know, Greg Schiano has been, you know, a tremendous mentor to me. He's kind of the guy that has helped me through my career, just like Brett, in terms of, you know, the next opportunity around the corner. And, you know, he's been a big guy from a defensive philosophy and just a way of teaching and progression and working things systematically and speaking the same language. That's been a great influence in my career.
You mentioned speaking languages. Is there terminology going to be different for the guys, or is it stuff that what's the transition like? Because it's been defensive coordinator for these guys.
You know, and I think that's the part that I realized after a year how much, in my opinion, we could have helped our kids out as well as helped our staff out. We had, you know, two defensive coaches come from Wisconsin. We got Randy coming from a variety of backgrounds, and Tabor, who had been here, and I thought we could blend together. And we did at a certain level, but I do think an overriding issue is just making sure that we're all speaking the same language, trying to make it a little bit more concise, a little more detailed, a little simpler for our guys. I think, Rob, one common person that we both shared was a guy by the name of Norm Parker, who unfortunately as a mentor passed about a month ago, but a guy that really probably taught us to speak simplicity in the world of college football as good as anybody. And I don't want to overstep Rob, but we talked a lot yesterday just about even just how to set a front. There's a million different ways you can set it, and we tried to, and when I first came here, we tried to put in a package that you could call one call and it could set the front to every situation. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I think you got to believe in something and build around it, and that's kind of the guidance that I know Rob and I have both shared, and that's what we'll take.
How familiar have you been able to get with personnel? Have you watched any tape?
You know, I really haven't had a chance to watch a lot of tape. Now, you know, I've done some research on guys, and there's obviously guys that are coming back in the program that I'm excited to work with, but really it's a clean slate. You know, I got here Saturday night, and, this week I'm hoping to get an opportunity to meet with the defensive football players and get a chance to know them and develop a relationship with them, and watch a little film, not a lot, but just to kind of get a sense of where they're coming from. But basically just move forward and press on and see what's around the corner.
You like pressures?
Pardon me?
Pressures, attacking?
We're going to be an aggressive defense. Schematically, I think, though, we're going to be a 4-3 team. It's important to have a great base defense. Before you can get into pressuring and doing things of that nature, you got to be able to play great base, and that's where we'll start. But as we get better at that and we become more comfortable with that, like Brett's talked about before, we want to dictate to offenses, not let them always dictate to us. And one way to do that is to pressure.
Especially with the spread offense is making people not play their base. How do you dictate to a spread offense?
I think there's a variety of ways you can do it with personnel. You want to match personnel groupings. The other ways, not always rush 4. You can rush 5 and 6 guys, but at the same point in time, still give yourself some freedom with whether you're in single high or double high safety. So I think if you mix it up and pressure, not always give them the same look, but still have something, a foundation of rules and language that you can rely on, it'll help you to dictate to them.
When you were at Rutgers and you had things going the way you wanted, what would you say the percentage is that you would bring blitzes and stuff?
We really kind of looked at a game in a couple different sections or areas. On first and second down, we were probably 67% base, it depended on the opponent and what we wanted to accomplish. Third down, that might get a little bit higher depending on what we felt our matchups were with our 4-man rush. And then, then we really had a very precise plan in the red zone that was dictated to what offenses did down there. So it kind of varied in those 3 areas. But, when we felt that we could and we could disrupt an offense, we'd bring pressure. When we felt that we could sit and play our base defense and disrupt an offense and do that, we'd do that.
What did you learn after a year in the NFL? Enjoy the college game more, pro game? What
I'll tell you what, I learned that football players are football players. And at the end of the day, whether it's a student athlete or a professional football player, they want to have the tools necessary to be successful. And if you can provide them with that information and those tools, they're going to gravitate towards you. And, football players are football players. And as coaches, the 2 things that we can really give them are technique and scheme. And after that, they've kind of got to let their God-given abilities go out and make plays. So it's our job to make that as simple and concise as possible so that they can make plays.
Coach, you may have already kind of touched on this, but maybe I just didn't quite understand it. How much will be new? Both of you can answer this. Coach Field, you might have a better perspective since you were here last year. How much new will the guys have to learn, and how much will they be able to continue with what they have after last year? How much of a change is it going to be?
Well, it's kind of, I will be able to help out there a little bit, and Randy as well, and Tabor, is just that one thing I said a year ago is let's not change anything that we as coaches can learn instead of trying to make our players learn it. So here's a simple thing. The word under is a way to, it's a type of defense. It's how we first learned it. When I first learned it, it was under defense, but it was also a lot like eagle defense. Now, I know this means nothing to you, but eagle defense became under defense then became tight defense. It's 3 different words, but here's how Smitty and I think. We like the word tight, which means it's going to be the exact same thing as kids know under, but tight is a very quick, concise verbiage that you can get done in a short amount of time. So we'll go on the air of whatever allows us to speak a language that our players can understand in a very short time frame. It has to have meaning and it has to have a direction. That's where we'll go. But for instance, our league coverage a year ago was what a coverage called 8, which is basically a pure quarters concept that allowed our corners and safeties to play quarters coverage, play a little bit of off. Smitty and I are huge. Robb and I are both big believers in quarter, half, which is a quarter 6, which we call cover 6. And it's just going to help our players, I think, play a little bit more aggressive, play a little bit more with their attitude. Up front, I think the other part that Coach Smith and I are very excited about is the aggressive style Rory brings. I haven't had a press conference on Rory, but the one thing that really jumped out, Rory, when I started out with a list of resumes, wasn't necessarily at the top, but after I interviewed him and after I talked to the people, he kept rising and rising. And when I came to make a decision, he was the first and only man I offered a job to, because it's all about getting across the line of scrimmage and being aggressive and letting our guys play in a manner that I think the SEC plays with. Nothing against what we're doing. It just allows us to play a little bit better.
So overall, some of the concepts are very similar with the language.
Exactly. I think, and that's the way, Bo, I think you can step into it. Hey, we're going to call this tight. The reason we're calling it tight is the opposite of that is split. And there's some things that will make a lot of sense to our players on how easy that can identify and change in a short amount of time.
We want to have a systematic approach, and it's all about communication on defense, and where things that are already in place, where the communication fits the system, I'll change my verbiage. If there's an area that maybe we can make it fit a little bit better systematically, we'll change. But we're going to try to keep it as consistent as possible for the players, from this point forward, and make it easier and simpler for them to learn.
Coach Smith, will you coach the secondary or just safety? So if you coach the entire secondary, what would Taylor do, Coach?
Well, it's a working. But he is our defensive coordinator and secondary coach, who's responsible for all 4 DBs as we see it. The part that I think is going to be fun for us is to continue to let coaches grow. Tabor worked with the corners last year, but I wanted to bring that room together, so it'll definitely be a transition for those guys. But on the same account, Tabor can work with all 4 secondary positions as well as possibility of a nickel position. But as the season progressed last year, the one thing I really wanted to make sure, and you've heard me and Rob say it now several times, communication needs to be cleaner. And I think it's more important for us to have a secondary that's together, a group of linebackers together, and then a D-line that's together, and how those 3 groups work together is really, really important. Another part that will be really big for us, 2 things just here in comments. There's a part of defensive communication that's paramount is what do they have on the field? So we identify with 21, 11, 10, 12, 22, 13, whatever that terminology stays the exact same. That's what that Rob's been used to all the time. And then I would say, as far as one of the neat things for me is I didn't talk to a lot of people about this process. I felt it was a big hire for me as a head coach. I wanted to keep the circle tight. I didn't let a lot of people in. I interviewed a lot of people that didn't want their names getting out there. I think it's very entertaining for me to watch speculation and thoughts and processes go through, because as head coaches, if you want information out there, you let it out there. Guys that want to leak names out there or want to say certain things, you do it. As a head coach, I've just never been in that racket. So I kept everything very, very tight. Talked to several people that will never have their names released because I told them that and felt it was important. But one of the first people I talked to Robb about, who didn't even really know our connection, I talked to Sam Pittman, because North Carolina played Rutgers several times. And Sam right away made the reference that probably in his tenure at North Carolina was one of the most difficult preparations for them offensively, because of the pressures, the misdirection, and the complexity of their defense that they went against. So I thought that was a pretty nice feather in his cap.
Rob, with last year's defense, obviously, but just by recruiting, the problems a lot on the back end. What's your philosophy on getting freshmen ready to play right away as far as to help on defense?
I feel the same way as Brett. We're going to play the best football players, and right now I'm still, in a kind of an evaluation process to figure out, what people's strengths and what people's weaknesses are. But, a lot of that, the philosophy of getting freshmen ready to play is, we've got to be very simple in what we do. We've got to be concise. A lot of things that Brett's talked about with language and communication, so that the system is in place, that they can learn it, to give themselves an opportunity to compete for a chance to play.
We watched a recruiting film yesterday just to go through, and I want him to see that, because now he's going to – the other reason I wasn't in a big rush is now I've let my coaches take this week. I'm going to be gone with this rules committee meeting, and we've got SEC meetings Thursday and Friday. I have a clinic that I have to go speak at. So I gave our coaches this week, and Rob's here all week. He can kind of sit back and digest all this film without anybody interrupting him, and he's going to be able to meet with their players. So that's why there wasn't a huge rush to get this done as well.
Rob, will you be in the booth or down on the sideline?
We'll work together, as a staff to what's the best fit there. I've been accustomed to being on the sideline. I've been in the booth before, but whatever the best fit for us from a staff as it moves forward, that's where I'll be. I could go either way.
What do you thoughts about joining? What do you thoughts about joining a league like the SEC, where the offenses would be like more spreads and things like that?
I'm excited about it. It's it's the best league in college football without a question, and you're going to get different challenges every week with different types of offenses, and you know that's exciting for me because you got to be able to prepare for that, and you got to be able to put a specific plan together to stop each offense, and you know it's going to be a challenge, but you know it's one that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to working with our defensive staff on that. There's a wealth of experience in that room as well that has seen a lot of things, and I'm anxious to work with them, and we'll have a plan together to stop a specific offense each week.
What was the conversation with Randy Shannon like when did you feel like he was interviewing you, or how did that go?
You know, I didn't. We kind of grabbed a cup of coffee together, and we just talked football, and really, you know, that's I know I don't want to speak for Randy, but that he was very comfortable in that setting talking football, and I know that's really where I'm at. My biggest comfort level is talking football, and you know, we sat for a couple hours. It seemed like it went like 15 minutes, though. The time flew, and I think we really found that we were on the same page on a lot of things and shared the same vision, and I thought it went very smoothly.
Did you know any of the assistants here previously from coaches or anything?
I maybe met them a couple times, but, you know, not an established relationship of any sort.
Brett, how many people did you interview, and what kind of put Robb over the top?
How many people did I interview? I don't know if I have an exact number on it. I know I interviewed 4 people besides Robb that I considered legitimate candidates, people that I felt if this didn't go forward, that was something I was going to be able to do without a doubt. You know, as kind of was the case with the D-line position, just overwhelmed by the people that reached out, people that have an interest. I think in this one in particular, I had to be guarded against people that knew that they knew what my last coordinator made, you know, so you want to make sure that someone wasn't either A, trying to get a pay bump and you know, to the legitimacy of it. But on the same count, I think we got a great place here. We got a great place. Jeff Long has a tremendous reputation of supporting his football staff, and that was a lure for a lot of people. I've kind of been not taken back, but just a lot of people make that comment. And then just to play in the SEC, and then also just from within the SEC, there's the great thing about being all over the place in the month of January and never being really in the same city more than one night in a row is I was all over the place, and I could coordinate some conversations and some face-to-face meetings with people that, you know, were not necessarily in their home or region as well, which made it easy because this wasn't. Robb was exploring other options as well. He's a very good coach who had other options in front of him, and we were walking a delicate line there on what we wanted to have get done. I didn't want his wife getting pissed at me as well. I've known her longer than I've known him, so it's something that I'm glad it came to this point because it's I think something that's going to truly benefit our student athletes and the whole program here at Arkansas for a long time.
Brett, can you comment on the Michael Sam news that's coming out in the last 24 hours?
Me or Robb?
Both of you, really. He's a defensive player, so it'd be good to hear from Robb, but I know Commissioner Sly's comment, and people were starting to comment on it. What's your reaction?
I wish I'd read Commissioner Sly's comment. But
he said it, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you know, it took courage for him to be able to come out and
I tell you what jumped out to me. I mean, ever since, you know, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a town of 1,800 people, and if you're in an environment where you know, you only know what you know. So then I go to college, and I'm in college now, and I see and witness things that I've never seen before, and it makes your mind grow. And as I become a head coach, and as I've seen society change and community change, and the view of so many different things change, it's allowed me as a head coach to become you know, much more educated to the way of the world, and everybody is their own person. Don't judge others for what you lack in educate, you know what I mean, and not knowing or understanding a situation. You know, I've recruited student athletes who have, you know, have gay and homosexual parents, you know what I mean? So it's something that I knew was on the verge of coming, and when the basketball player came out a couple of years ago, I tell you the number one thing that struck me is I'm a big believer in watching teams do things that are of uncharacteristic or things that aren't anticipated. You look at what Missouri did as a football team, and for that young man to come out to his team, what I read in August a year ago, and to not have that come out till now shows that that group of men were extremely tight. They felt the value of family and closeness that now you look back on the season and you realize how special it was for them. You're not shocked at all because you realize that atmosphere and that family value and that culture was evident in that locker room for the entire year.
Yeah.
You want to hit us, Smitty?
I was going to. I think the NFL locker room is a very accepting place. I mean, there's a lot of people from different backgrounds in the NFL locker room, races, religions, north, south, east, west, geographical, and I think it'll be accepted there. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters amongst those guys in there is, number one, that they're accountable to each other, and number two, that they do their job. So I think the other stuff is, like I said, they're very accepting, and it'll be interesting to see it going forward.
Yeah, but you're going to push for any new rules?
I've had a couple phone interviews. This is a player safety-driven year, so last year was rule changes. So anything this year has to be player safety-driven. I think a couple of them that popped up on the radar that are very unique is the quarterback rule, and obviously Rob probably has a better understanding than me, is that it kind of protects the quarterback in the pocket about not hitting him below a certain level. And I think there is a difference between the pro game and the college game, because you got quarterbacks now that specifically stand in the throwing motion and take off on a run, and it's a different game than the NFL. So, and if you tell me that some of our more elite quarterbacks who are great runners, he's sitting back there and you can't hit him below the knees and you can't hit him above it's getting a pretty limited window you can hit somebody in. So that I'm sure will be a nice conversation. I'm a non-voting member. Again, I repeat that, I'm a non-voting member this year, so I'm there in spirit and AFCA representation. I'm on the board because I think it's a valuable part of our game, and I can steer add into the conversations, but I don't get to vote this year. Yeah, Corliss is back on the team. I removed Alex for a week. We'll evaluate where he's at a week from now. But I just basically told our guys we have zero tolerance. We're in this thing all together, and I removed Corliss and two guys last week, Nathan Crouch and Bubba Jenkins. But they're back into it. I talked to those guys yesterday. They're in it. Alex will be out this week, see how he handles this week, and get ourselves moving forward. You'll probably see that he is not going to be as active on Twitter and everything else as well. He's been removed from all social media until further notice. He's a tremendous young man that has to, step up in certain areas to get to where we want to be, and I think he'll do that. I'm very excited. Here we are. This is where I get a little bit of a off topic from what we're at. We're in an 8-week window of winter conditioning. 4 weeks have gone by. And if you're not moving forward, you're not helping us at all. And we need to see guys gain mental gain or physical gains, strength gains, and then definitely an academic area. And if somebody's lacking in those three areas, it's pretty easy for me to remove the football side of it until they figure it out, because that usually makes kids a little bit more accountable.
Frank, you went through the recruiting process without a coordinator. How did that come up? And what was it?
That's a great question. It never came up. There was one kid that was played safety that his dad asked the question, and it wasn't even really a pressing issue with the young man, but the dad asked the question who was going to be his safeties coach, and I said, well, I can guarantee this, as good as the last one is, the next one's going to be better. And I can assure you this, your son comes and plays at Arkansas, and we have the success that we're going to have, the chances of him having that same safeties coach for the next 4 years is probably very, very small. The world of college athletics has changed. Transition happens quite a bit, whether it's right or wrong, if you got good coaches. It's not like I'm firing these people. So it never came up at any other time, not even mentioned, not asked about, not spoken about to any of the young men, especially the ones, not anybody that we were in the final process with. I think that part was probably overblown on the outside world looking in. I think a little bit because of the track record that we've had, that we hire good coaches, we bring them in, and they have success, and they move on.
All right, thank you.
I can do it. No.
When you remove a guy for a week, does that mean no lifting, no?
Nothing football. If I remove someone from the program, it's football only, so they don't have any lifting groups and anything to do with football, but they're fully engaged in every medical, academic, anything that are academic. It actually allows them to have a little bit more free time for that, and then they'll go through one-on-one individual workouts with Ben Herbert, which sometimes you wish that you were in the regular mainstream of what they're doing. So.